Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Class 1A. This week we will be doing another character deep dive on Uraraka Ochako, and alongside me I will have James Graham and Dylan Beal as always to help dive into this character. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm ready to talk about her because I felt like in terms of like show manga, she's kind of like fallen off. So like she needs some love. Let's bring her into the limelight again.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, when you say it out loud, it's like, yeah, she really hasn't gotten as much screen time as I think we initially thought she would. So yeah, let's she's definitely in the run for best girl. So I think she deserves some content.
Especially watching through, like, you have a really good point. I love the character. I'm watching back through the series again with my girlfriend right now, and just even from her introduction on, I'm like, man, I love her. Just like catching Deku right off the bat, and then all of her early interactions with Deku or just a class are so fun that I do miss her in the show and the manga as we've gone on. So I'm glad we're gonna give her some love today. But before we get into all that, for those of you that do not know, this is the Class 1A podcast. It is a weekly podcast where every single episode we dive into either the lore of the My Hero Academia universe, the manga, or once we do catch up on the anime and gets going, which we do now have an official release date starting in March, we'll be doing every single episode recap as well. But with that, if you do listen to us on Apple Podcast or any other podcasting services, do make sure to leave a 5-star review. It does help out a ton of people find the podcast, and also lets us know that you guys are enjoying the content we're doing. But also, if you're watching on YouTube, push the subscribe button down below, like, comment, all that kind of stuff. Any kind of interaction with us, whether it's on YouTube, podcasting services, or on Twitter at twitter.com/pod_off, means the world to us and lets us know that you guys are enjoying the content that we're doing. But let's not waste too much time with the whole intro and actually start talking about Uraraka and just kind of giving a little bit of the background information on her first before we even really go into talking about her too much. So obviously, her quirk is going to be gravitation. No, zero gravity. I'm sorry. Allows her to nullify gravity on an object and then turn it back on. Her hero name is going to be Uravity, which is a play on Uraraka and gravity, kind of putting those two together. And then obviously she has two unknown parents. We don't know that, just that they're construction workers, and that there is a whole little arc about there, but that's about as far as we know there. She's in Class 1A. She's been in the series from just about the beginning. Couple of cool little things about her costume is that actually her helmet, wrists, necks, and legs all help in a different way to actually help with her gravity quirk. We all know that if she uses it too long, it causes her to throw up. So she has different parts of her costume that helps that. So the helmet reduces stimulation in her ears. The wrist clamp down on her wrists to actually release blood like pressure gauge. I don't know. I'm kind of reading this off a thing that Dylan found off the wiki. And then her neck stimulates pressure points around her neck area, and then her legs break fall from elevation with shock absorption. So this was actually one of the first times. But before I even get into anything else about it for you guys, have we seen anyone else besides Bakugo really have their costume actually do anything useful for them?
Yeah, actually, so they I don't think they go over it too well in the show itself, but everyone's costumes are kind of important to like
Except for
how their
Deku's
quirk
until
interacts.
later on in the show.
Yeah, basically. But I even think like Deku's like there's some stuff that goes behind it. Like, I actually think the reason why they're so useful is the designs for this and Bakugo's are actually the same person designed them. Um,
Oh
and so I
yeah.
think that's why they're so functional. But I know that other people do have some functions to their outfits, but they're not super apparent, or they're not like super important like obviously Uraka's like every piece of her it helps her like basically not throw up.
Yeah, I think it's something like you said, like it gets missed over in the anime a lot, which I think like I
I
mean
feel like it was missed in the manga even. Like, I would know manga spoilers, but
it's
I don't think it was
probably
even
one of those.
mentioned there.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's probably one of those things that's in like the end of the chapter or something like that that you get that extra little bit. So I think that's probably where it came in. Um, but yeah, I feel like stuff like this kind of information, like people like to learn this shit. Especially with hers because they all have a purpose. You know what I mean? Instead of just like improving her practicality, it's actually just combating the side effects, which I think is a really cool twist on how the suit works.
Yeah, I mean, like speaking of that, I just like really like her quirk itself because it's so simple. and it makes sense. It totally makes sense. Like that's why that's her like a back like the pushback from it is that she gets sick is because it's dealing with zero gravity and it throws off her balance or whatnot. And so it makes sense why she gets sick. I also like whenever in the anime when she throws up, it's that weird sparkle
The
stuff.
rainbows.
It's a
yeah.
rainbow. She throws up
Yeah.
rainbows. Yeah. Like
I do appreciate that as well. And just even like her whole character aesthetic just fits. Like she kind of has her costume as like a modern kind of spacesuit going off of the zero gravity quirk name. Like I really like her character design overall and just her character personality as well, which we'll talk about a little bit more. But just like I said, from the beginning, she is just one of those characters that is designed from the ground up to make you fall in love with her right away. She's such a good one to have around Deku. It's fun to kind of have the love interest, which I know you want to talk about later on in the episode, Dylan. But just overall, she's been a character I've enjoyed from the beginning, and I really don't have complaints with her. With a lot of characters that have complaints about character art, like right now, my only complaint with her is that we're not getting any of her in the anime recently. That she feels like she's kind of gone on to that background cast. Is really my biggest complaint with her throughout the entire series. I mean, she's not Sue with her annoying points where she's up and down, or she's not Bakugo, or she's nothing like that. She's just always been a consistent character that you've loved from the beginning.
Yeah, I think the weird part about her though is that she's clearly a fun character, and that's the way that she's designed. So you have these like characters that can be put in like very serious situations and characters who really can't. So like Mineta, you don't want to see Mineta in an epic fight, right? Like that
No.
it just doesn't work well. Bakugo, he works in epic fight. Um I originally thought that Uraraka was like, designed to be that fun character too that you couldn't really put in those serious situations, but she's like such a cool and complex character that they were able to kind of flex that and really put her in those like actual real fights and have it be super meaningful. Like we'll go into a little bit later, but like her fight versus Bakugo, right? Like that was like a serious fight and that was sick as hell.
it was
Yeah.
a really well done fight.
Still
yeah.
one of my favorite
I-
fights of the series.
I think like my initial only issue with like as far as like her hero aesthetic and stuff like that was her name, like her hero name, because I wasn't sure like how much like secret identities were really like a factor in this universe. You know what I mean? Because I mean like the Western style of like comic like superheroes and stuff like that is that you always want to protect your identity because if you don't, people can use that against you. But it does. It's not as big of an issue in the My Hero universe. So I was like, man, why would you put a part of your name in your hero name? But I even think that's like that's not a bad name either.
And
And
especially
I
going
think
to UA as well, like you're literally at a sports festival, which is the Olympics like level. Like everyone's gonna know your quirk and your name the second you go into that. So I
Yeah.
understand a little bit of that fear because we met her and knew her hero name really before some of that happened. I'm pretty sure. So I get that, but again, at UA, there's no one that's not gonna know your name.
Exactly, right? So, and I think initially it like her quirk kind of confused me because I didn't really like the functionality, like when you were first introduced to it, didn't make a ton of sense. It was like, oh, she can like rip the gravity from something and then just like kind of control it on a whim. And I think just the delivery of how the quirk was displayed took a little while to like fully like understand from just a viewer perspective, at least for me, because like I don't know, you're so used to seeing like stuff like Deku and Bakugo, which is like you have visual cues on when they're using their quirk, but with her, like a lot of stuff didn't even get like there wasn't like there was like this force field that like was around it symbolizing that like the gravity was being ripped away from it. It was just very much shit just started floating and you're like, oh, okay, right? Like, so that was the only thing. But I think once you saw more of her and you saw, which I mean, like we've said before, we're not seeing much of her now. You kind of got the idea of like how everything worked. Plus the puke and rainbows is like it's fun and it's like it adds some femininity back into the character because like like nobody wants to see me puke, and of course if she is gonna puke, she's gonna puke fucking rainbows, right? So that's what I like about it too.
Yeah. And I guess just going back into the actual character like drives is something that's super interesting to me. I'm pretty sure we had a conversation on this on one of the recaps or something. I don't know. I remember we've talked about this before. But in the show, Uraraka literally says, I want to be a hero for the money. And I love that about that. I'm pretty sure, James, you had an issue with that the last time we talked about that. But I love that it is just, to me, she feels like the most down to earth. Deku and Bakugo all want to be the best hero in the world and the strongest. Even Todoroki you can throw in that group as well. And a lot of the other ones too, Ito wants to live up to his family's legacy and be this great hero. Uraraka just wants to support herself, her family, and all that. And that's something that you don't hear about often in a hero story. You always hear about everyone trying to save the day, be the best, making their city better. Like, no, she's doing this because she knows it's going to be able to support her financially, which I think is really cool. Obviously, we see in the Bakugo fight and other moments we'll talk about, she has that drive to want to be a great hero. But the core reason why she's doing this is for financial support, and she's not ashamed of that, really. And I love that part of her character.
We got really bait and switched on it though.
Yeah,
Like to
we
be
did.
fair. Like
Yeah.
the episode, like the setup was like, oh, why is everyone being a hero? And everyone's like talking about it. And she's like, I just want the money. And then there was that whole like everyone's like, what? Why would you say that? Blah blah blah. And like it totally she was like, oh no, well, my family's really poor. I want to take care of my family, which
Their
like
family's not even poor. They run a construction company. Like they like that is like you
Whoa.
need capital to start something like that up. So
Maybe not in a quirk world.
no, definitely in a
well,
corporate
it's a
world, like,
really small construction company. Like
oh, yeah, okay. So they
yeah.
have like one front end loader and
Yeah,
one dump truck.
so
My
Yes.
bad,
small
guys.
that the parents don't even get names. We don't know anything about the construction company and the names. Like, they're so irrelevant, we don't even learn about them. So
But
yes,
but
they need
again,
the
like
help.
it like the motivation isn't greed. The
No.
motivation is, it goes back to support, which again is a very like hero-esque mentality, right? Like it's not like she's not selfish or anything like that. But yeah, like Dylan said, it's a bait and switch of like, oh, she's just super greedy, I guess. And no, of course that's not the case, especially with her.
And I don't even see that as bait and switch, but yeah, I get it.
You would rather a hero that was straight up greedy.
I
You
would love to see that. I would love to see that drive as well. And I think we kind of got a little bit of that from Chris and Captain Celebrity, at his initial releases was for the popularity and all that. And that can lead to good character arcs. And I just like that not everyone in this class is trying to be hero number one, and there are other reasons outside of that. And that's just something that flushes out the world, because it's not realistic for everyone to come into UA wanting and having this weird obsession with being the number one hero.
Well, I actually think you do have to have that because how many how many people go to Harvard being like, I want to do this so I can just make a totally normal,
decent living,
a
yeah.
decent living. And
Yeah.
like you're not gonna have that. You have these people that have like incredibly high shooting for the moon ambitions of where they want to go. And that's kind of like what UA is, because these aren't these are going to be national heroes. These aren't going to be, the manuals like patrolling streets,
Be nice
making
to
That is going to be
Manual.
a national hero.
huh?
He
Yeah,
wants
no,
to be.
actually, there's a reason why he's there.
Yeah.
Like whether it's like support or whatnot, like he's going to be a national hero of some sort. But
Yeah,
like
it's the
these
same
aren't
thing with-
people just patrolling the streets trying to get money. These are like big time people.
Yeah, like even like our, I guess, like our lesser known cast of the class, I guess, right? Like I mean, they do want to be the most, like they do want to be at the peak performance of each one of their specific roles. Guys like Koda and Shoji and stuff like that. Like I mean, they want to be the best at what they do, despite like character flaws, like especially with Koda and stuff like that. But like it's like again, like Dylan said, I think the drive is like a mandatory prerequisite, except for what's her face. She's trash. She doesn't have any like key motivation.
Sue?
No, not Sue. Sue, of course, has motivation because she has to. Oh my god, it's gonna drive me up the wall.
Describe the. Oh yeah,
yeah,
Invisible Girl.
invisible. What is her? Somebody Google her name really quick because I cannot remember it for the life of me. But yeah, but other than that, though, everybody has like clear cut ambition. And I think actually Mineta is like a better example of somebody who has not as wholesome as a motivation, right? Like Mineta wants to be popular to get laid. Like that's Mineta's whole thing, right? But it's manifested in such a drive that it has gotten him to UA. So I don't know. Like I mean, I feel if anybody, Andrew should be drawn to Mineta, not Uraraka. Like
What is that supposed to mean?
it means he just doesn't have the most wholesome ambitions.
Whatever.
But
All
Uraraka
right.
is great. Uraraka is a great character.
I agree. And unless you guys have anything else kind of from a high level stuff, we can start kind of going through some of the big moments and talking through some of those moments throughout the show, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I guess the first one outside of her initial character reaction, where she actually gets screen time, we learn about her quirk and see how she kind of does a fighting style, is going to be in the tag team battles of with All Might on like the second day of class, which was her and Deku versus Bakugo and Ida in the Heroes versus Villains exercise. So looking back on this just a couple of days ago, yes, she's part of this, but it really was such a Bakugo and Deku show this entire arc. Obviously, Bakugo having all of his mental breakdowns, pretty much with Deku having a quirk now. But even towards it, we do get to see a little bit about Ochako's character here, and even her improvised and unique ways that she can use her quirk. I mean, and just kind of her determination up there. So that's really what I want to focus on because pretty much outside of that, it's just kind of the Ida versus Ochako battle there because they split up very early on. But what do you guys think about this arc? Just kind of general thoughts about that. If you don't have too much to say, we can jump on. But
Yeah, I just really liked it because I thought it was just a good like demonstration of her abilities and where they could be taken. I think that's what the important bits were because yeah, it is a Deku versus Bakugo like grudge match fight, like most of the first two seasons are. I thought it was a cool like little showcase of her abilities and what they could be used for.
Yeah, and I think that's really the key word to kind of like to tone in on is it was a showcase, right? And you get to see how it matches up against like another person, not just like robots or something like that, right? Like you get to see how somebody, especially with a quirk that doesn't really let them fly or anything like that, where Ida has like one of the best like ground based quirks out there, right? But for her to kind of show how she can deal with somebody like that and trip them up. I mean, now mind you, she did damn near like bring down the building, like more or less with like the bomb and stuff, like because that's why she got shit on towards the end of it. Um, but yeah, I thought it was a good display of like what her quirk could do in a more realistic setting.
and it was really a cool moment because we learned that she can zero gravity herself as well. Up until this
Yeah.
point, we only saw her do it on other people and other things. So it was kind of a cool moment. And literally, when we were watching, like my girlfriend said, like, "Oh wow, she can do it to herself too." And I thought that was a really cool moment on top of the improvised super move and all that, which is the first we hear about super moves as well. Even though they're not a huge thing, and her super move wasn't that big of a super move, it was still the first time we got to hear about that. So it wasn't anything game changing here, but there was some really cool moments here. Unlike the sports festival, the sports festival, as I said earlier on, I mean, we have moments of her throughout the first two parts between the horse race and the after obstacles course. But I think the biggest character arc moment for her was in the Bakugo versus Uraraka fight. And like I said earlier on, this is by far one of my favorite fights, probably a top 5 fight in all of the show for me right now.
It's good. It's
Yeah.
really good.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
Because
This
go on.
yeah, no, I was just gonna say this is you always are curious on a character's grit and like until it's displayed, you know what I mean? And I think this like from both ends, because the thing I liked about this a lot too was people were giving Bakugo flack because of how like how hard he was on her. But like again, it was like a character development like twofold. From Bakugo, it was pure respect because he knew what she was capable of, and for her, she was pulling out all the stops to deal with them. And I thought it was such a cool way of doing it too, and like really using her quirk to her advantage. Um, of course, unfortunately, Bakugo's like raw destructiveness kind of beat that. But like it was such like a good way of thinking about it and stuff like that. And it also set up for her next character arc, which I thought was sick too. Like when we go into her internship with Gunhead, we'll get to that. But I mean, like it was just there was so much goodness out of this for like just building respect for the character, showing how she thinks. Like I mean, I thought like this was definitely one of my favorite fights out of that entire arc, outside of I guess probably Todoroki and Midoriya, because that visually was just it was super fun. But this is a real close runner up.
Yeah, I thought what was like pretty incredible out of it is that she had like that thought of, even if I win this, I'm not going to win the whole thing. Like I'm not the best in the class. I'm not going to be the best in class, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to, put 100% into this and really try to fight. I
Yeah.
think that's like an important mentality to like have out there because like it's something that like we as viewers are all thinking about anyone who's not in the top three. Basically, it's like we know these people are going to lose, but like it's still hype that we can see them fight and they actually like might break into the top three too. So I did like how they had that kind of like push and pull a little bit, and they kind of teased out like the top three aren't unstoppable. Like they can be taken down. Like we could have that switch. It's possible.
Yeah. It's very rarely conveyed to the viewers like that is like an active character's mentality. Like they like the self-awareness, right? Like you don't
Yeah.
usually get that. So it's cool that we do.
And it's also just a great example, not only her grit, but her mastery of her quirk is above
Mhm.
most in the class at this moment. I mean, obviously she has a drawback of wanting to throw up, but even how long she was able to sustain all of that rubble up in the air for so long shows that she can push through that while doing hand-to-hand combat. And that pretty much, I mean, Bakugo and Todoroki are the only two in the
Yeah.
entire first year class that would be able to survive that kind of attack. I mean, it has to be against Bakugo. It has to be someone like that in order for that strategy to kind of work, because she had to use the smoke and all that to get it up there. But just in general, like that scale of an attack beats everyone else in the class except for Todoroki and Bakugo. And just that she's already able to do that in her first year at UA shows of how far she can go with this quirk because of how mastered she already has it, but also just what her skill level is right now.
Well, I do think like not only like she's like in this basically where that scene was. You got to think about who made it in the top into that top running. So herself, Bakugo, who undoubtedly has the most mastery out of his over his quirk in the class. Todoroki at that time didn't because he refused to use fire, and Midoriya just was pure raw destructiveness and he didn't understand how to harness it at all. Uraraka was number two, like she was 100 like clear cut number two. Um, and like it's just yeah, it was just one of the things where of course she has to go against Bakugo for this story arc to work, right? So I think she kind of got shafted, honestly, because I think I mean maybe not against Todoroki
No, she wins
because
against
you
Deku. She doesn't win against Todoroki.
yeah, because like again, like I like with Todoroki, she doesn't have that ability to really toss anything up in the air because the ice comes out as like a fluid thing, not like in rubble and stuff like that. But like yeah, it was just like you really appreciate the power of the character from that whole arc.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it is a good setup, like you said earlier, James, for kind of moving into the internship with Gunhead. And when she kind of announced it to the class and was talking about it, like everyone thought it was such a weird kind of decision for her to go there because they just had the quirks were so different. But her going there, wanting to learn the hand-to-hand combat, which is obviously what she is not the weakest on, but where she can improve on, what is so important for her because everything she has to do is actually touching the person she's going against. So I think it was such a cool way to do that, and we do see her actually going to use it at one point in the actual um series. But I just think it was such a good character decision, and again, showing her personality and how she's different. That yes, she wants to be the best hero, even on top of wanting to support her family and going through this and understanding where her weak point is.
Yeah, this is like clearly a moment of this is what separates like I will use Mineta again for an example. This is what separates like the characters like Mineta and characters like her of where she's clearly investing into her powers and seeing them really grow and get really strong in like a very like dynamic way. And like that's why I think like it's a shame that we don't see a lot of her now because like she could be pushing into that top three because like she's getting the skills. Like she has the quirk mastery. She knows the martial arts now. Like she's a really powerful character.
Yeah, it is a kind of a shame with how the anime has gone as far as like both her and Ida started out as such like solid rocks of like Deku's kind of like friend group and support group and stuff like that, and they both kind of fallen to the wayside, which is a shame because yeah, like you said, we saw the steady power increase of her that she would like is it like a a top contender, right? And they eventually were just like I don't know what the deal was with her. I was like, yeah, well, she's sick now, but we're gonna focus more on this Bakugo Midoriya thing now, which is I mean it makes sense, but like yeah, she's like once like again like this character is which I don't know how often you really see in anime when I really think back to it. She's the epitome of self awareness. She knows that when somebody gets close to her, she's kind of boned because she dealt with it with Bakugo. Bakugo wanted to get closer and she needed to get to him, but she didn't have the tools to do it. And then she was like, "Okay, here's the thing I need to fix," and she went and actively fixed it. And I don't think you just see it like a lot of people, especially in the internships, were like, "I need to refine the quirk, not myself." And Uraraka was literally like the complete flip. You know what I mean? So maybe that just became because she already had like a decent mastery of the quirk already. But I think even in later episodes, I think it still gets better. Like I think she still improves on the quirk, but she just made sure that this one definite flaw was no longer a flaw anymore.
But I think so. This is something I came up with last night when I was laying in bed. is
Got headcanon going on.
she is weak in close combat, but she also has no medium to long range attacks. She can't do it. I mean, she has to find a way to get up to a person to really be able to do anything in combat situation. I've also been watching Jujutsu Kaisen recently.
Oh yeah,
And
okay.
I think there's a strategy you could take from that show to use in there is she can remove the weight from any kind of object. So if she carried baseballs or something like that on there with a baseball bat, could she
Oh,
not?
you're talking about the chick with the nails and the hammer.
Could she
Yeah,
not
yeah.
just use some kind of weapon to project objects at someone with zero gravity and release that right as it's about to hit them for some kind? Like it'd be a little wonky with their quirk, but that feels like such a down the road like mastery mid to long range that no weight on her because she can just have it weightless at all times, but it gives her something to, if you hit someone with a baseball from 10 yards, they're going to be dodging that, gives her a chance to get in there and touch them. Like, she needs something mid-range, and I think it kind of worked out like that.
Yeah, like it doesn't even need to be anything like really even cumbersome as like a baseball. Like I mean, like, and just thinking of how they did Kaminari, how Kaminari kind of has like the wrist shooter kind of thing. If she does something similar to allow her to close the gap, and again, all those things are going to be weightless.
Wait,
They're gonna
give
be
her like a
coming-
little lead
Like a little-
projectile to shoot at
yeah, like
people.
just like a little slingshot or some shit. Like she's golden, man. Like
So originally we had this slated towards the end, but do we just want to go into how you have quirk? Because I have some
I'm
thought.
so sorry. I did not even see it. No. Okay, let me have
No,
one more
we
big
we
moment.
could jump into it. We could jump into
We
it.
have
though.
one more big moment, then we're going to do what's next for the character, then we're talking about the other stuff after that, okay?
okay,
I'm sorry, I did not see this at the bottom. I would have totally brought it up then. I didn't read through the outline. I apologize. But okay, the last the last big moment for her, really, which has been 2 seasons now, is going to be fighting Toga at the training arc. There were a couple moments after, obviously, she was part of the Shihasuke raid and all that, but there wasn't any really big character arcs besides that. So the fight against Toga at the training camp is the last thing I really want to talk about. Any thoughts? I don't remember this arc as much as I should.
Yeah, I think this kind of leads into our next point pretty well, but it's like a weird fight because like this is mostly us really getting a lot of insight into Toga and her thoughts and feelings.
yeah.
But it's a weird fight. There's like weird tension there because Toga there's weird tension between Toga and everyone because it's a weird fight and it also sets up for um is it the license, not the license exam, but when they're fighting the other schools.
Oh,
What was
the
that?
preliminary like
Yeah, like-
license.
The provisional license, yeah, because it sets up for that. Because this is where she gets Uraraka's blood.
Yep.
In this fight,
Yeah.
and we clearly saw that she still has some ways to go for her actual like hand to hand combat because she's
But
still
yeah,
getting
she
bested by Toga.
She did use her gunhead method though, and that's how she ended up winning the fight.
That's like that was like a big bone to pick. It was like her entire internship with Gunhead was like rooted into one move, and that was it. Like, I mean, I get that it's supposed to symbolize more than that, but I was like, man, you got one hip toss, and that's like it. Like, give me a bit more. But like, yeah, like this was more of like a Toga centric fight, and Uraraka was like more or less the catalyst. You know what I mean? Vice it being more for Uraraka, and like I mean, like Toga was living in Uraraka's head like rent free. Like it was more to her advantage than anything. But I mean, it wasn't a bad fight for her. But I think it's just shitty because like this fight was it's like the Bakugo Uraraka fight overshadows this like tenfold.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like like this doesn't even touch it, and I think that's the big issue with it is that like I've already seen that. I need something that beats that or is on par with that. You know what I mean? So I get that this was much more dialogue based, but I mean the Bakugo fight had a ton of dialogue too, and yeah, like I mean it just felt lackluster.
Yeah, it was really just a good chance to set up that moment later on in the professionals. This was just a setup. It was one to get her
Yeah.
obsession with Deku. It came from the end of this fight when he showed up to check on them, and also to get Ochako's blood for the provisional license. Like that's really what this fight came, and to show like, hey, she actually learned something during her training. Like that's really
Yeah.
what it was. That was the 3 takeaways from this. So again, that's probably why like I said I didn't remember this arc as much as it was, because there wasn't as much to talk about with her as often, and that's the sad part, is that really she's had one great moment. She's always around, but really the Bakugo fight, it was kind of the peak of her character to date so far, and I hope that does change in the near future. I mean, we've kind of seen a little bit of what season 5 is going to look like with more centered around classes again. We may get a chance to see her shine, but we'll have to wait and see for season 5. But all right, since we already started the conversation, we can kind of, so how we have it on here is the bullet point speculation. What is next for her character? Evolving her quirk.
You're skipping. Dude.
Nope,
What are you
nope,
doing?
you're skipping around.
I said
You
we're
are.
moving this up next.
No.
Oh, okay.
You wanna
Yeah.
move this? Okay. All right. You
We
want
said
to
we're
do this
moving it up next
Okay.
because I already started it. So
Okay,
Dylan, you
fine.
can continue on with your sort of thirsty thoughts based on my whole baseball bat thing, or you can just go on your own.
Okay, yeah, so I want to paint a picture of like Ultimate plus Ultra Uraraka, right? Uravity. So imagine this is like time skip. She comes this is time skipped, right? It's in the future. She's like a national hero at this point. She shows up on the battlefield, right? She's just reaching her hand down and touching the ground and taking the gravity off of giant fucking boulders, picking them up, throwing them across the battlefield, and then releasing them, right? And so there are these giant boulders. So the long range, she has the long range. She's throwing it at like villains and stuff. Absolute destruction. She reaches down at the ground. The entire battlefield just starts lifting up. Everyone's thrown off their balance. They're falling over. Easy incapacitations. She's in a big fight, right? Big, huge fight. She's picking up skyscrapers, throwing them around and stuff. And she if she wanted to, she could be absolutely destructive with her
I was
stuff.
about to say, this sounds like more like super villain Uraraka, not superhero.
Check this one. Check this one. All right, this is my headcanon that just happened in like the last like 10 seconds, mainly because of how Dylan started that. So yeah, we go future. Like her suit already kind of like the astronaut thing. We get like outside colonies outside of the Earth now, right? She goes full fucking Char's counterattack, drops a fucking colony on Earth. She becomes like the grand overseer of space, and everything is like
where is
she's
this
the supreme
going?
leader.
What is this?
And also imagine this, right? They're in a fight. They're the big bad villain, right? This villain is just killing stuff. And then you see like Midoriya and this dude like standing head to head. The villain's like, "How are you ever going to defeat me?" And all you hear is behind the villain, "You're already dead," and floats him up into space. Just yeets him into space.
Like, I mean, like think of like the power couple like dynamic. Like she just gives somebody zero gravity, and then Midoriya comes by and just boot fucks them, and then they're literally cast into the oblivion. That's it. That's how you beat all for one.
I
That's
mean,
how you
to
do
be
it.
fair, most villains, like if you go up and the second you put them off the ground, what are they gonna do? They can't do anything. They're zero gravitied. Bye.
Yeah, exactly. She can even hit them. She can hit them with a baseball bat.
I think this is the obvious thing that no one's talking about on how she could zero gravity someone and just throw them into space.
Well, no, I think that was kind of implied by the baseball that she threw into infinity. Like I think
She needs to do it then.
Oh
she
yeah,
could do-
I totally forgot about that. Like it just goes like infinite. Like
Yeah, it's infinity, and the whole class freaks out. So it is very clear that she can just do an object into infinity.
I need to commission Uraraka in like a Char get up. Like I need to get her with like the helmet and stuff like that. You can just start dropping
That'd be good.
colonies on people.
No, what? How where does it come from? Involving your quirks to dropping colonies on Earth? Like,
yeah, man.
mine was at least like, okay, she could do
She
this.
gets
Like,
heartbroken or some shit. I don't know. Midoriya just gets too obsessed with him being number one. She gets pissed off and drops a colony on his ass.
yeah, but how did we go from me suggesting like a small costume upgrade of something to shoot off of her wrist to distract someone to Dylan throwing skyscrapers, doing like she's trying to make money now? She's doing billions of dollars in property destruction. What the
Hey,
fuck
that-
is
Give her
this?
family work.
Yeah, to give her family work. It's all cyclical.
That's some
Jesus Christ.
nepotism if I've ever heard it. What the heck? All right, but no, kind of like taking a couple of small moments. I'm ignoring everything James said because there's nothing really there we can kind of take out of this. But there is some thoughts of being able to just do zero gravity of certain parts. We've only been able to see her do entire objects, so we haven't been able to see just part of an object have zero gravity. So that is a natural way her quirk could evolve. That if she touches the ground, only 2 meters around her
A certain
hand
portion,
is zero
yeah.
gravity and breaks up from the ground, and she can tear that out. Like, that is an actual huge improvement, and kind of tackles the same thing that I was going to do. If you are able to use anything and make improvised projectiles out of anything that is small, big, whatever size you need them, is actually a huge and really cool upgrade to her quirk that could easily be done in the second year, third year of school before even a time skip.
But that also, like, I mean, so like she also needs a way to facilitate it moving faster, though, right? Like, I mean, zero gravity is great, but I mean, like, it'll move it only at like basically the speed that she kind of launched at. But if she
Is that
becomes
true? With
either
the
like,
baseball, it looked faster than that. There's no
I mean,
gravity to it. You could eat.
yeah, but it also didn't go up at the speed that like Bakugo put it up or Midoriya hit it up. Like, the speed was exceptionally slower. So she has a way to facilitate that going quicker. Again, like something to launch it with, like a baseball bat or some shit like that. Or she just physically gets more stronger, or again, like, I don't know, for like, or her suit does something like that. That's how you improve on that, right? But like, yeah, her being able to isolate things being zero gravity, I think that's probably the next best step for the progression of the quirk.
Yeah.
And then you go from there.
Anything else that's kind of in this earth for evolving? I really do think her obviously improving hand-to-hand combat, but then having some kind of suit upgrade or quirk usage that you can see, like with the Koichi, the different ways you can use a simple quirk like that
Yeah.
Uravity's like limits are very far, and so it's even hard to think what it is, but I think the couple we have there is good.
I think for suit upgrades, she needs some gyros. I don't know how they would help, but put them in there. I'm sure. They'll figure it out, but gyros would probably work pretty well.
Yeah. All right. So then the last thing we really have before we do wrap up the episode is going to be just the whole concept of Uraraka pretty much being the main love interest in this show. I don't want to preface this too much, Dylan. This is something you wanted to talk about, and I kind of want to let you lead this entire even idea.
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting on how they evolve her from her introduction, because her introduction is very that Deku run into her at the opening of the school at the gates. She's beautiful, and he's like struck, like can't move or whatever. And they really kind of run with that whole like them having this like love tension between each other, all the way up into the point of like Deku kind of falls off because he's like, I need to focus on being the number one hero. And like from there, Uraraka has this like weird, like, oh man, I don't know if I like, what are these feelings I'm having? And it's like, it's just drawn out. And it honestly, like, it's fun to speculate. And I know we all like shipping here and we want the characters to get together, but like, it's a little exhausting when it's like that shallow of a thing of where it's like, I don't know what these feelings are. We're like, we know what those feelings are. Just do something about them.
But my favorite part about it fizzles out like a human relationship does.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, it totally on the nose there. Like it fizzles out because there is nothing happening.
Yeah,
and it's kind of both of them agreeing like, yeah, nothing's gonna happen. I need to like put these away. Like this isn't like what we want right now. And they evolve her past being the love interest because. The main concern I had with her is that she would just be this love interest and she wouldn't actually be like a real character. But they kind of took that and even made her more real of a character by saying she has this like arc of like how she feels about Deku and then evolves her past that and keeps her as her own character with her own motivations, doing her own things, and even having her own group.
She's no longer a love interest. She no longer gets screen time.
Yeah, but to be fair, she now also has like a whole other group of people she's with. It's not like she's this hang on for Deku either.
Yeah, it's her, Sue, and oh my god, what's her face?
Mina,
the other one from the big. Who?
Mina?
Oh, I was gonna say
what's from the big three. From the big three.
The big three, Hado.
Oh yeah, that group.
Yeah, those three are kind of like a clique now, right? But it was like basically after she got called the fuck out by Aoyama that basically like put the kibosh on it. And I mean, I guess that's kind of what happens with like younger flings, right? Like, I mean, somebody calls you on it, and then like you kind of realign your priorities, sort of thing, and that's kind of it. Or you get like weird obsessive like Toga does, but like, I mean, that's just Toga.
I don't think it's done. I think it is on the back foot.
It's probably not done, but
I think it's going to come back very strong. And the next time when there's like a down arc, like right now we have the training arc coming up. We don't even know what's kind of coming up after that. But I think the next time where there's really like character building arcs that aren't around combat, I think that's 100% going to come up. Because I think that they even had that point, like, hey, we've both gone our own ways, and Uraraka still has those feelings, and Deku's just dumb, but probably has those feelings too. And you had that kind of setup or whatever like that too down the road. So I think we're far from done. Or even I could see there being just a small time jump at some point, and then after that, they're already together. Like, hey, we finally got our stuff figured out. I'd be
No
fine with
way.
that.
They're gonna milk that for sure.
Yeah. Or somebody could go the route of Dylan's YouTube feed and milk the Uraraka Bakugo ship.
No NTR. No, but
Why
so
say
like
those letters now? People are gonna Google that and figure out what that means because I had to.
No,
It stands for Nito Rare, I think is what it is. I think it's
Yeah.
the whole. So you want to Google that? Have fun.
don't. Also, everyone who listens to us knows what that DGen stuff is, anyways.
I didn't. I'm on the podcast.
Yeah, but you're a main character. Like, don't worry about it.
So to kind of bring it back to it, I actually think this character needed that. That like after we rose those feelings, I think we needed that arc of like her kind of detaching those feelings to make it not the love interest, because otherwise it would have felt kind of weird to, like I said, to have her like either be a total attach on and her not feel like a real character. But because we have this like interesting arc of like her feelings like spiking up and then her figuring out what they are and then kind of detaching a little bit, and now I feel like we could actually ramp up to her being a love interest without that being her defining character like
Thing,
trait. Yeah,
I agree.
which I think is really cool. I really like how they wrote it. Now, was that the whole intention behind how Horikoshi writes? Maybe not. Maybe he just. I presume it's probably a thing of where he's like, this is going to be a slow burn. Also, I want to rotate main characters. I think that's probably how he wrote this, and that wasn't his intention, but we still got a good outcome of it, so I appreciate it.
It's impossible to guess Horikoshi because we also did a 45-minute episode on who's a traitor, and when no one even knows if Horikoshi even remembers there is a traitor anymore. So it's very hard to kind of predict him what he's thinking. We're just all glad that he does such good writing, even if we don't know where it's going. But
he might not even know where it's going.
Exactly. But I mean, we do have like our overall thoughts on the characters. I think we've all kind of said that we're all pretty big fan of her. Overall, I mean, is there any last kind of closing thoughts or anything you want to say about her as a whole before we wrap up?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be really awesome once they rotate her back in, once they take her off the bench and put her like into the limelight of being like part of like a like if Team Midoriya comes back as like being a top thing that people talk about with the story. I think that those arcs around that are gonna be really, really awesome.
Yeah, give me like first string Uraraka. Like once she gets back there, I think well not only one are we gonna have like a different Uraraka, but two, like she's gonna be a fucking force, man. Like it's gonna be sick. Like we've just seen steady progression of her, and I think she's gonna be an absolute weapon when she comes back.
Yeah,
we just need her to come back. That's all. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, she's did all the agency work too, like Deku has. We've seen how Deku's kind of evolved too them recently, and she has that same one. So I agree that we're all huge fans of her, and we all just want to see more of her. So hopefully, season 5 does bring that. But with that, that is where we're going to wrap up this week's episode. Next week, we will be doing Vigilantes again. We're actually going to pre-record that this week because next week is going to be Christmas in the United States, and I guess Canada, I guess for most of the world. The holidays next week. I'm sorry. I was trying to be like wordly accepting. No, and I was just bad. So we will be pre-recording that episode. Make sure to check that out. Otherwise, we will be back in the new year with another special episode after that. But thank you all so much for listening to this episode. Let us know your thoughts on Uraraka Rather in the YouTube comments below, sending it over our way on Twitter or whatever way you want to reach out to us on. But with that, that'll be all for this week's episode of Class 1A, and I'll see you next Saturday.